Well, thank you, Judge Moore, for that generous introduction. One of the reasons I like Judge Moore is he's doing a good job in Boone County, and he's making me look good with the low unemployment in northern Kentucky. It was actually kind of fun running against each other. I don't want to do it again, but to Judge Moore's credit, he was the first person to call me up after the election of the other 6 people I ran against and said, let's work together for the betterment of Kentucky. And I said, let's do it. And ever since then, and that was 7 years ago, ever since then we have been working together to help Boone County. But the way Northern Kentucky works is it's not just about one county at a time. These judges in Northern Kentucky work together like a group of judges I've never seen. Pendry and Knockelman work together to really get things done for the region. And no one of them tries to take all the credit for it. So I see another one of my favorite judges here, Judge Riley from Spencer County. I saw Judge Barnett from the back there. He's leading the way with industrial hemp there in Harrison County. I see so many of you that I recognize from coming to KCO events. And I know what a sacrifice it is to stay here on the last day and listen to the last speakers when you could be out playing golf or something, but appreciate you sticking around for this. Jamie Comer, you know, they say when you go to Washington, D.C., if you want a friend, get a dog. Well, when Jamie Comer showed up, I finally had a friend. And he's doing a great job there. He's on the Ag Committee. I'm on the Transportation Committee. Again, it's not about one congressional district or the other. If there's a transportation issue, he lets me know, and I do what I can in the committee for his district. Same thing with Ag. If I've got farmers that come to me and say, we need this in this bill, I say, well, most of these bills are cooked. The cake is baked in the committee, so I need to go talk to Jamie Comer to make sure that gets in the farm bill to help out our district. So we've got a good relationship working together. Also, Andy Barr is on the Financial Services Committee, and he's coming together and helping us with this hemp issue in Kentucky. We've got banking issues that need to be dealt with. Some of our hemp producers and hemp farmers have found that the national banks, the big banks, don't want to deal with them. We haven't had any trouble really with the community banks, but then they also have a problem with the credit card processors. So all of us from Kentucky working together have Andy leading the way in financial services, because that's where this bill came from, have worked on something called the Safe Banking Act, which just passed, and it's got provisions in there for industrial hemp to make sure that the farmers and the producers will be able to do that. We'll be able to get the banking they need and the credit card services. I like to joke, Colorado supported this bill, and so did Oregon and California. They don't grow as much hemp. They grow its cousin. So I said we got the rope-growing states and the dope-growing states together to get this bill passed, and now it's over in the Senate. It's election year. You can always tell when it's an election year in Kentucky. Everybody's being promised something. And I know almost everybody in this room had to run for election. So it's tempting. It's very tempting to promise something, but then once you get elected, especially at local levels, in local government where you got to deliver, you got to watch out for those promises. But I can tell it's an election year here in Kentucky from all the promises at the state level. When I ran for judge executive, I wanted to be transparent. I wanted to make sure that we didn't do anything even that had a whiff of impropriety. So in my campaign, I said, it was a 4-way primary for judge executive. I said, now I know, I'd go up to people and say, now I know some of my opponents are promising you gravel on your private roads. And I said, I am not going to do that. I will not gravel private roads. And we went up to one guy, and his eyes got real big and got excited. And I thought, wow, he's for this reform platform. And he said, I am so glad you said that. This dust is killing me. I need asphalt on my road, on my driveway. And I just I didn't correct him. I just slowly backed away and thanked him for his vote. We did not pave or gravel his driveway. To tell you the difference, before I get into some of the federal issues, I want to relate the job that Jamie and Comer and I have now to the job that you all do at the local level. And I told this a few years at KCO, but I see some new faces here. There was a woman who called Gene Snyder. He was a congressman from Kentucky who made it up to the chairman of the Transportation Committee. And she called him up one night, and she was upset. She had drug her trash all the way to the end of her driveway, and it hadn't been picked up that day. So she got on the line, and she called Gene Snyder. She was going to get something done. And he said, ma'am, I'm a U.S. congressman. I'm in Transportation Committee, but we don't have any authority or responsibility for the local trash pickup. Did you think about calling your commissioner? And she said, well, of course I thought about calling my commissioner, Mr. Snyder, but I'm not going to start that high up. So that kind of put him in his place, but it's also, I mean, it's a joke, but it's real. I mean, Judge Moore has more capacity to improve the economy of Boone County directly, and I give him the credit, I give Governor Bevin the credit, I give President Trump the credit for the 2.9%, I think that's the latest number, unemployment rate in Boone County, leading Northern Kentucky. A lot of that's, a part of it is because we've got the airport there. It's a weird situation. It's called the Cincinnati Airport. Kenton County owns it, but it's in Boone County. Okay, figure that out. Gary Moore points out they get the revenue from it. So I have, in the Transportation Committee, everybody likes transportation, okay? I haven't seen anybody complain about a paved road or a new bridge or anything like that. I've seen them complain when it's not their road or their bridge, particularly when I was judge executive. But the hardest part is, how do you pay for all this? And so I've introduced a bill in Congress that would help all the airports, not just the CVG airport, but all the airports, because I try not to be too parochial, but I try to think about what could I do that's going to be beneficial to the whole country, because you got to get other people to co-sponsor these bills. And so the bill that I've introduced, just to simplify it, would allow the airports to raise more of their own revenue by raising their passenger facility charge. Like the federal government tells them how much they can charge a customer now to use the airport. I think the airport board and the airport CEO should pick that number, not the federal government. And in exchange, in my bill, the big airports that decide to raise their own passenger facility charges and raise their own revenue to make their own improvements, they have to give up the federal grants. So what that does is it takes pressure off the grant programs, and the small airports that can't make enough money by charging, even if they charge $20 a ticket, they couldn't make enough money to fund their airport. They need the government grants. They would be able to get more of these grants because the big airports wouldn't be scooping them up. In any case, this is a bill that would be great for the CVG airport, and I've got a Democrat co-sponsor for it, and a lot of Democrats are in favor of it. So we might make some progress there. You know, when you first get elected to Congress, it's everything is marble and mahogany and cherry and granite, and you're looking at all these monuments and the tall ceilings, and you say, how did I get here? You're like pinching yourself, how did I get here? After about 3 months, that wears off, and you look around and say, how did these other jokers get here? Well, this year has been one of those years where I look over in the committee and say, how did they get here? Jamie Comer and I, even though he's on Ag and I'm on Transportation, we're both on the Oversight Committee. It used to be called Oversight and Government Reform Committee, but now it's just called the Oversight and Reform Committee. They took government out of the word because their target now, the other majority, I'll call them, since we're in the minority, is to target private business as well. Not that, as if we don't have enough issues with wasteful spending in government, they want to go after the private sector. So I don't know if you've heard of the squad, but 3 of the squad, as they're affectionately called in Congress, they call themselves the squad. 3 of the 4 squad are on the committee that Jamie and I serve on, this Oversight Committee. It's also, if you didn't see us storming the room, the bunker that's 3 floors underground where they're doing the secret proceedings and depositions, you didn't see me and Jamie storming that room because we're actually already in that room. We're on the committee that has these hearings. So we are in the private depositions with the ambassadors and the other executives from the executive branch. And it's tough to watch. I mean, this is not really how I think government should be done. You know, when you have fiscal court meetings, they have to be open, they have to be announced, they have to be noticed in the newspaper, on the courthouse door. The press needs to be notified, and they're kind of skipping all of that here at the federal level. So government, if you understand that government gets worse the higher up you go, you guys are at the best level of government there is. It doesn't get any better. But that's what Jamie and I are wrestling with. But we're trying to get real stuff done instead of being caught up in all of the weapons of mass distraction. That's what I call these issues in Congress that dominate the news cycle, the weapons of mass distraction. I don't know if you remember, there was a big call for gun control about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. It's all you would see in the news. I'm the chairman of the Second Amendment Caucus, so it kept me busy. Everybody else had an August recess. I had an August where I was going out there and writing op-eds and getting published nationally, trying to get the facts out there to stop this gun control. It's all but disappeared now. I would like to think it was the work I did, but frankly, it's because there's one of these weapons of mass distraction has been deployed, ironically, by the Democrats, and they're in the majority, so they're not getting their agenda done. The next time I see the president, I'm going to recommend that he release his tax returns 1 page at a time on Monday morning for the next, 6 years. And there would, the majority in the House right now, they'd be waiting. CNN would sell a lot of ads. They would comb through that. They would look at every pixel of that PDF, trying to find some, abuse of power or something or some obstruction. And it would be a good distraction, and then maybe we could get the things done that we're trying to get done. Let's see, I want to talk a little bit about Syria, because that's been in the news. I said that Jamie was my friend, Jamie Comer. He's not just my friend, he's the one, and this may hurt Jamie's reputation, frankly, back in Kentucky, but he's the one who votes most like me in Congress. I wouldn't, from Kentucky, okay. I probably just damaged his chances of re-election or anything else, but actually his first vote in Congress, he got, what happens is there's 2 votes. He came in a special election, I think, he came in a special election. And so his first vote, he got to give a speech. It's not like where 435 people raise their hand and get sworn in. It was just him. And so everybody's paying attention to his first vote. And so I told Jamie, who didn't have any staff yet, it's illegal to hire staff before you're sworn in, so there's this catch-22. I said, I know you haven't had a chance to read this first bill, so here's my advice. Walk into the chamber, and they got all our names up there. Wait to see how I vote, and then vote the other way, and they're going to love you up here. You'll be just fine. Well, I said this, later that night, McConnell was introducing Comer to a group in Washington, D.C., and I didn't have a speaking slot there, so I interrupted McConnell with it and told that story. Boy, that was a mistake, because McConnell, he waited for everybody to laugh at my joke, and he says, well, I'm glad to see you and me are giving Jamie the same advice. In other words, don't vote like me, and you'll be okay. But one vote that Jamie and I did take together that none of the other folks from Kentucky did in the House was on Syria. We support the president's decision to withdraw some troops from the Middle East. It was just amazing the backlash he got from just trying to move 50 troops. And I think we need to get out. I think we need to get out of Afghanistan. I talked to the Inspector General literally monthly for Afghanistan, who watches all the spending over there. We're spending $5 to $6 billion a year over there on infrastructure, on their government. Okay, think about what you could do with another $5 to $6 billion for infrastructure in this country. But that's just the infrastructure portion. We're still spending $40 billion a year in Afghanistan on the military effort. So when you add up all the spending over there, it's about $50 billion a year. That is how much the Highway Trust Fund is per year. We could double the Federal Highway Trust Fund, and I guarantee you'd see some of that in each of your counties come and make a big difference. We could double it if we took all the money we're just spending in Afghanistan alone and spend it in the United States. So I support the president on putting America first. And by the way, I know the people do too. In 2013, President Obama came to Congress because supposedly Assad had crossed a red line, and he wanted to send troops there. He wanted to send money. Now, we were sending money secretly. He wanted to send more money, but to send it publicly. And he wanted to escalate the civil war in Syria, and he wanted us in the middle of it. And he asked Congress to approve it. And this was September of 2013. I remember it because I've never received so many phone calls in my office as September of 2013. I got 100 phone calls a day, Every single one of them said, do not go to war in Syria. There's nothing going on there that is worth our sons' lives, my daughter's lives. I've got kids serving. I had people who had been in the military saying we don't belong in Syria. And I got 5 days went, and I got 100 phone calls every day. It wasn't until the 6th day I got one phone call and somebody said that we should be in Syria. What happened? Well, there was a shutdown. The federal government shut down on October 1st, 2013, right when this debate was happening. And Congress never had to vote on whether we should go to Syria or not. We never voted on it. And so what happened then was more money. They escalated the secret funding, according to the New York Times. They escalated the secret funding that went to Syria, destabilized the region, created the space that ISIS evolved in. And then 2 years later, Obama sent troops there anyway, and then more troops got sent there. And just like a lot of these wars start, we just got drug into it bit by bit. And now when somebody's trying to get out, he's receiving a lot of resistance. But we had a vote in Congress, and this is the ironic thing. None of my colleagues ever voted to ever put a single boot on the ground in Syria. None of them would take that vote. Instead of voting, yes, we should go to Syria, or no, we shouldn't go to Syria, they just quietly let it disappear in 2013. They were happy not to take a vote. Well, now that the president is trying to move just a few boots in Syria or out of Syria, they passed a resolution saying, no, we don't want the president to do that. The president can't do that. So that's the irony, that they didn't have the courage to vote up or down on whether we should be there, but now that the president's doing something, they've got the courage to criticize the president, but not the courage to even say that we should authorize a war there or not authorize a war there. So that was just an important thing that I wanted to say. How much time we have left, Gary? 10 minutes. All right. Well, it sounds like we've got time for questions, and that's always a dangerous thing. But I want to leave you on this thought because Hilda Legg is speaking next, and this is topical. My daughter, who's 14, she goes to Lewis County High School. All my kids have gone to public school. My wife and I went to public school, K through 12 in Lewis County. Both my wife and I went to MIT. My wife got into Harvard. She did a little better than me, but she turned them down to go to MIT. Went to public school in Lewis County. Our kids go to public school in Lewis County. But the one problem with going to public school and your dad's a congressman is the kids have a lot of questions for you. And so my 14-year-old daughter, every week, somebody would ask her, have you met Trump? Have you met Trump? They didn't care who I was, but they knew her dad worked in D.C. and that this should have happened she should have been able to meet Trump. Well, the White House has a Christmas party every year where they invite every member of Congress. Every member of Congress gets to bring their spouse. I got my wife's permission to take my daughter so that she could say she had met Trump. And my daughter's very excited about this. In fact, she spent the whole week with me in Washington, D.C. We drove up on Monday. The White House Christmas ball was going to be on Thursday or Friday. She had plenty of time to think about what she was going to say to the president when she got her moment to talk to him. But she also did something else. She practiced shaking my hand about every other minute. She would walk up to me and just grab my hand and shake it. Is that how you shake hands? Because kids these days, they don't shake many hands. They'll shake their iPhone and they'll tweet and they'll Snapchat and whatever, chit chat, whatever it is. What's the one from China now? TikTok. Okay, they'll TikTok. Anyways, she learned to shake hands that week. We get in the line. A lot of times the president does this all the time, so he doesn't have to shake your hand. There's a lot of germs out there, and if he just does that and you do that, you forget to shake his hand. And hey, but she wasn't going to forget. She walked right up to the president. We waited in line. I thought, I'm just going to let her do all the talking. She gets up to the president. She grabs his hand before he can give her a thumbs up. And I knew she had a good grip on it. She wasn't going to let go until she got her moment with the president. And she looked at me in the eye and she said, Mr. President, can you make school lunches great again? I thought, well, this is interesting. Where's this going to go? You know what? Instead of laughing at her, and I was holding back the laughter, I was like, oh my gosh. And he said, you know what, I need to work on it, don't I? Because I talked about that in the campaign, and we really haven't got it done yet. So I'm going to work on that. And they did, and they have made some improvements, and there were some really onerous regulations on sodium and whole grain. Not that they weren't already, but there were more about to kick in, and the president stopped those, and they've made some improvement on school lunches, because if the food goes in the trash, nobody's getting the nutrition from it. So it's got to be palatable. It's got to be something that kids will eat. For some, like Jamie was talking about, some of these kids, it may be the only good meal they get that day. And so we got to make sure it is a good meal. So hats off to my daughter, probably the best lobbyist in Washington, D.C., as far as her classmates are concerned. And I'll take a few questions now. Maybe I'll let Gary moderate. He can
introduce yourself. Hi, my name's Bill Marshall. I'm with Giseki Health. Good to see you again, Congressman Massie.
Good to see you, Bill.
I saw you recently with a sharp young man, rising star, I think, who's running for city council in Philadelphia.
Yes.
On Instagram, Maj Tour. How did you start that relationship, just out of curiosity?
So, yeah, this is a political issue, but I'll get into it. So there's an African-American male who grew up in the hood. I mean, literally, he calls it the hood, and one of his slogans is "Make the Hood Great Again." Okay. He's also got another hashtag, Black Guns Matter. And I thought these were just gimmicks and social media, hey, I want to get some attention. But I run into this guy in front of the Supreme Court on a gun issue. He was there making his voice heard, and he told me he wanted to run for city council. And I said, you know what, that's the most important level of government, the county and city level. It doesn't, we always look at who wins the presidency, but you can have more difference in your inner city community as a city councilman than you could as a congressman. So and what he's doing is he's trying to bring small government solutions to the inner city. And I said, I can get behind that. He calls himself a solutionary, which if you're at local government, you have to be a solutionary. If you're at federal government, you say, we'll leave it up to states, and the state, Frankfurt, can say, we'll leave it up to the county. But the counties and cities have to be solutionaries. So Maj Toure is a solutionary, and we'll see if he wins these races. I hope he does. I recognize this gentleman, Judge Riley.
John Riley from Spencer County.
By the way, he was a magistrate before I was ever a judge executive. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And so he gave, for better or worse, he gave me advice before I got elected.
Believe it or not. I just want to give both you and Congressman Comer, I can't say enough about what you all do on a serious matter of strengthening families, not only here in Kentucky, but across the country with some of what your work in Washington. But I also want to commend both of you for your commitment to your own families. And it must be a tremendous burden to be able to juggle what your responsibilities are in your work in Washington and in your districts back here in Kentucky and your family. And I just really commend both of you and all people serving up there that do that. And thank you very much. I'm proud that you're my congressman.
Thank you, Judge Riley. People say, what's the best part of your job and what's the worst part of your job? I would tell you the best part is actually pressing the button to vote. Like, a lot of people take that lightly, but I love to read the bill and be informed on what it is and press that vote and take that vote seriously. That is the best part. Instead of calling up somebody and yelling and screaming at them, why'd you vote that way, or you better vote this way, I get to vote and represent 750,000 people. That's the best part. What's the worst part? The worst part is raising money, without a doubt. I hate begging, and you're almost reduced to begging. Although, now that I know what the job involves, I don't feel bad asking somebody to help support what I'm doing. But the worst part of the job is being away from your family every single week that you're in Washington. But in 7 years, 6.5 years, I've only spent 2 weekends in Washington, D.C. I come back to Kentucky every single weekend. One was a shutdown and one was an inauguration that I had to be in D.C. And if I don't get back home to my family, I can't function in Washington, D.C. So thanks. The other thing it's given me is an appreciation for the people who serve overseas. And I don't say this on social media, but I've got a son overseas right now, crew chief on a helicopter, which means they shoot the machine gun. And I'm so proud of him, but I really feel for him because he's away from our family, and I don't want to equate what I do 4 days a week to what somebody does being away from home for a year. Like, he's not even going to come home for Christmas. But it makes me really appreciate those families, those military families that are separated for those periods of time. And that's why we shouldn't take it lightly when we send them to Syria and Afghanistan and whatnot. So thank you. And if you ever want to, okay, one more question. But when people ask, can I pray for you? I ask them, pray for my family. Thank you, sir.
Congressman Massie, I know I'm not in your district. I'm a long way away in Carter County. I'm
Carter.
Mike Malone from
I
Carter
was at
County.
Carter Caves 2 weekends ago
Oh, were you?
with my daughter. Yep, and her friend.
I just wanted, I know you do everything you can to help the whole eastern end of Kentucky, even the parts like Carter that are next door to you that aren't in your district. But is there anything going on or any way that you can help move the aluminum plant forward on the Carter-Greenup County, Boyd County line?
There's, we had a lot of industry come into Kentucky. That's one of the pivotal things. If and when that happens, it'll be very exciting. But I try to tell people it's like a startup. Every business that you try to get started is like a chicken and the egg. Until you got customers, you don't have revenue. Until you have money, you can't produce anything to get the revenue. So the endeavor there in Carter and Greenup, and that would be a big boost to Lewis County as well, is like the biggest startup you ever saw. And they're currently trying to solve the chicken and egg problem. I do everything I can for Brady Industries. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to them to raise the money and get that off the ground. But in the meantime, anybody that wants to do industry anywhere in Kentucky, whether it's my district or not, I'm going to support it. So thank you for what you're doing there. By the way, I know I don't have a say in the redistricting that's going to happen in 2 years. And I know I probably make more enemies than friends by saying this, but if I could get Fleming County and Carter County, I would be in heaven.
Maybe we could annex each other.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.